Mail-order bride caught rich rancher sleeping in her barn. What happened next shocked the entire town. She had arrived in the small town on a bright morning, her suitcase rolling along the dusty road behind her. Everything felt strange and new. The wide fields stretching farther than her eyes could see, the smell of earth and hay in the air, and the quiet stillness that was so different from the busy streets of her hometown. She had traveled a long way, leaving behind family, friends, and the familiar rhythm of life she had always known. Her heart beat faster with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was supposed to be the start of a new life, a life she had hoped for, but the uncertainty made her feel a little uneasy. The house she was to call her own was large and sturdy, standing at the edge of the ranch. Its wooden walls were weathered by the sun, and the wide porch seemed inviting, yet strangely silent. She remembered the letters she had exchanged with her future husband. His words had always sounded confident, kind, and respectful, but seeing the ranch in person, feeling the emptiness around it, she wondered if the man behind those letters was truly as warm as he had seemed. The door creaked as she stepped inside, and the scent of old wood and polish filled her nose. The house was mostly quiet, with only the soft ticking of a clock echoing through the rooms. Her first encounter with the rancher was brief but memorable. He appeared at the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp features that gave him an air of authority. His clothes were simple but well kept, suited for a man who worked on a ranch yet lived a life of comfort. There was a slight smile on his face, but it didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes were deep, dark, and seemed to hold stories that he had not shared. He extended a hand, firm and confident. "Welcome," he said in a calm, steady voice. There was a hint of curiosity, almost like he was measuring her, trying to understand what kind of person she was. She smiled politely, shaking his hand, feeling the strength in it, and noticed how careful he seemed with his words, as if every sentence mattered. The first day was filled with introductions and explanations. She learned about the ranch, the animals, and the chores that needed to be done. Everything was different from what she had imagined. The animals were larger than she expected, and their sounds, mooing cows, neighing horses, and clucking chickens, felt louder in the open fields than she had ever heard before. She tried to absorb everything, but it was overwhelming. The rancher guided her patiently, showing her how to handle the animals, how to carry feed, and how to walk safely along the uneven ground. There was a quiet dignity in his manner, a kind of authority that demanded respect, but also an unexpected gentleness in the way he corrected her mistakes. Even as she followed his instructions, she noticed small things about him that puzzled her. He would often pause, looking at the horizon as if lost in thought. Sometimes he spoke in short sentences, revealing only what he wanted to share. There were moments when she felt a distance between them, a wall she could not yet see over. She wondered what it would take to break that wall, to understand the man who had brought her here. She remembered the letters and wondered if he had carefully chosen what to reveal and what to hide. In the afternoon, she decided to explore the ranch on her own. Walking along the long dirt paths, she felt both awe and fear. The land was vast, and she realized how alone she could feel if she did not adapt quickly. She noticed the barns, the stables, and a small pond shimmering under the sunlight. Each part of the ranch seemed to tell a story of hard work, patience, and dedication. She admired the effort it must have taken to maintain such a large property, yet she also felt a strange emptiness. Something in the air made her sense that not everything was as simple as it seemed. By evening, she returned to the house, tired but determined. She wanted to make a good impression, to show that she could manage life here, even if it was very different from what she had known. The rancher was waiting on the porch, looking at the sky as the sun dipped below the horizon, the colors of the sunset reflected in his eyes, making them look softer than before. He spoke little, asking only if she was comfortable. She nodded, trying to sound confident, but the questions in her mind kept growing. Would she fit in here? Would he like her for who she truly was? Night came, and with it a quietness that felt almost heavy. She lay in the room assigned to her, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the letters again, of the hopes she had, and of the fears she could not shake. It was not easy to leave everything behind and trust a stranger with her life. Yet she had made the choice. Somewhere deep inside, she believed that good things could come from this, even if the road was difficult. The first few nights were restless. She could hear the animals moving in the distance, the wind rustling through the trees, and occasionally the soft sound of someone moving inside the house. Sometimes she thought she heard voices, but when she looked, there was no one. Then the rancher seemed calm, but she noticed that he often stayed up late, working quietly, checking the animals, or walking along the fence lines. She did not yet understand why he did this, and she did not dare to ask. As days passed, small routines formed. She learned to feed the animals, clean the stables, and carry water from the well. Each task was physically demanding, but with each day, she grew stronger and more confident. The rancher observed her quietly, sometimes offering guidance, sometimes just watching. She began to see glimpses of his character, his sense of responsibility, his dedication, and the pride he took in his work. Yet there were moments when his expression grew distant, almost sad, leaving her wondering what burdens he carried. Despite the challenges, she felt a quiet satisfaction in learning and adapting. The small victories, successfully milking a cow, calming a frightened horse, or completing a task without his help, gave her a sense of accomplishment. She began to feel that she belonged, at least in some way, to this vast land and to the life that came with it. But she also knew that belonging meant understanding the man she was to marry, and that was a mystery that remained unsolved. One evening, she decided to explore the barn, a place that had always intrigued her. The barn was large, filled with hay, tools, and the scent of animals. It was quiet, yet it seemed alive with the stories of work and care that had gone into maintaining it. As she moved around, touching the rough wooden walls and feeling the straw beneath her hands, she sensed a presence, a silent history that made her both curious and cautious. She wondered if the rancher ever spent time here at night, and if so, why. The thought gave her a small shiver. The days blended into each other, each one a mix of work, learning, and quiet observation. She tried to balance her own feelings of nervousness and hope, seeking ways to connect with the rancher while respecting his space. She noticed the small acts of kindness he displayed, bringing her water when she was tired, guiding her gently when she struggled, or quietly correcting a mistake without judgment. These moments gave her hope that behind the distant exterior there might be warmth and care. Yet, even with these small connections, a sense of mystery surrounded him. He had habits she could not explain, disappearing late at night, walking alone through the fields, or sometimes staring into the distance with a look that made her uneasy. She could not tell if he was lonely, troubled, or simply private. The uncertainty made her cautious, but also fueled a desire to understand him better. She wanted to know the man behind the rancher's careful exterior, the one who had chosen her as his partner. By the end of the first week, she realized that life on the ranch was not easy, but it was full of small lessons and experiences that shaped her. She was learning patience, resilience, and observation. She had begun to notice patterns in the rancher's behavior, glimpses of emotion hidden behind his composed demeanor, and subtle hints of a past that he had not shared. She also began to form her own plans for how she could adapt, contribute, and perhaps even earn his trust. One quiet night, as the stars filled the sky and the air grew cool, she sat on the porch, thinking about the journey ahead. The house was silent, the ranch sleeping around her, and the world seemed to pause for a moment. She knew that challenges awaited, that misunderstandings and surprises were likely, and that her patience would be tested. Yet she also felt a quiet determination. She had come a long way for this new life, and she would face whatever came with courage and grace. Unbeknownst to her, that night would be the first of many where small mysteries and unexpected events would begin to unfold. The rancher, with all his quiet strength and hidden burdens, was a man who had secrets that even she could not yet imagine. And soon the first shock would come, changing the way she viewed him, the ranch, and the life she had chosen. The days of quiet observation were ending, and a new chapter of surprises, challenges, and discoveries was about to begin. The next few days passed in a blur of chores, lessons, and quiet observation. She was slowly getting used to life on the ranch. She could carry feed without tripping, calm the horses when they got nervous, and even anticipate when the cows were ready to be milked. Each small success made her feel more confident. Yet despite all her progress, there was still one mystery she could not ignore: the strange habits of her husband, the rancher. He was polite, sometimes warm, but often distant. She noticed that he had routines she could not understand. He would disappear at odd hours, walk alone across the fields, or spend long stretches in the barns without saying a word. At first, she had dismissed it as part of ranch life. After all, there was always work to do. But the more she observed, the more she wondered why he spent so much time in the barn, especially at night. One evening, after the sun had dipped below the horizon and the sky had turned dark blue, she finished her chores and decided to check on the animals. One last time. The barn was at the far end of the property, a few minutes' walk from the house. She could see the dim light from inside the barn flickering through the gaps in the wooden walls. Her curiosity was stronger than her caution. She had to know what he was doing there at such a late hour. As she approached the barn, she could hear a soft, steady breathing. She stopped in her tracks, her heart beating faster. The sound was unusual. It wasn't an animal. She took a careful step forward and peered through a crack in the barn door. What she saw made her freeze. The rancher was lying on a pile of hay, asleep. His hat was tilted slightly, his face relaxed, almost vulnerable. It was a side of him she had never seen before. Shock, confusion, and a strange sense of fear filled her all at once. Why was he sleeping here? Was he sick? Had something happened to him? She took a step back, unsure if she should enter the barn or run back to the house for help. Her mind raced with questions. The rancher had always been composed, almost unshakable. Seeing him in such a vulnerable state made her realize how little she actually knew about him. After a moment, she gathered courage and stepped quietly inside. The hay crunched softly beneath her feet, and the rancher stirred slightly, opening his eyes. He blinked, then saw her standing there. There was a flash of surprise in his eyes, quickly replaced by a calm, neutral expression.
"I didn't expect anyone to be here," he said quietly, sitting up. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice.
I heard noises. I thought something might be wrong." Her words sounded smaller than she intended, and she hoped he wouldn't be angry at her for intruding. He shook his head slightly and gestured for her to come closer. "It's nothing to worry about," he said. "I just needed to rest for a bit. Sometimes it's easier to sleep out here than inside the house." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "But why here?" Why not your bedroom? She asked. She couldn't hide the tension in her voice. I mean, it's the barn. It's strange. He sighed, a sound that seemed heavy with unspoken thoughts.
I have trouble sleeping sometimes, he explained. There's a lot on my mind.
This barn, it's quiet, away from the noise of the house. I can think, rest, and feel some kind of peace here. She nodded slowly, trying to understand. It was strange to see him like this, so different from the confident, distant man she had met only a week ago. I see, she said softly, unsure what else to say. Her mind still raced with questions about what other secrets he might be hiding. Over the next few days, she noticed subtle changes in their relationship. The rancher seemed more aware of her presence, more willing to talk, and less distant. He shared small details about his day, the animals, and the ranch. She could sense that he was slowly letting her into his world, although there were still walls he hadn't revealed. Meanwhile, the townspeople began noticing her. Small things like her walking through town to pick up supplies led to whispers and curiosity. In a small town, strangers always drew attention, and a young woman from far away, newly married to a wealthy rancher, naturally became a topic of conversation. People wondered what she was like, why she had come, and if she would fit into the town's ways. She overheard snippets of conversation, felt the occasional stare, and sometimes heard laughter that seemed directed at her. At first, it made her uncomfortable, but she reminded herself that she was here for a purpose, and she needed to focus on her life on the ranch. One afternoon, as she was tending to the animals, a neighbor stopped by. He was friendly, older, and seemed genuinely curious about her. "So, how are you adjusting to ranch life?" he asked. She smiled politely. "It's different, but I'm learning." He chuckled. "It's a big change, that's for sure." Most young women who come here don't last long. Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "I want to try."
I want to learn. I want to fit in.
She wasn't sure if he believed her, but she hoped her sincerity showed. As she continued her work, she noticed the rancher watching her from a distance. His gaze was calm but assessing, almost protective. She felt a strange mix of emotions, comforted by his presence, but also aware of the tension between them. There was still so much she didn't know about him, and the incident in the barn lingered in her mind. Why did he choose to sleep there? Was it truly just peace? Or was there something deeper she had yet to understand? That night, sleep did not come easily. She lay in her room, thinking about the day, the barn, and the strange glimpse of vulnerability she had seen in her husband. She thought about the letters they had exchanged, the promises and hopes contained in each line. She had believed she knew him, or at least thought she did. But reality was proving more complex. She realized that marriage wasn't just about companionship. It was about understanding, patience, and sometimes confronting unexpected truths. Days turned into a week, and she began to notice more of his habits. He would often walk out to the fields late at night, sometimes carrying tools or checking on fences. She tried to follow quietly once, curious about his nighttime routines, but he was too quick, disappearing into the shadows before she could catch up. She wondered if he wanted to be alone, or if there was something he didn't want her to see. The mystery intrigued her, but it also made her cautious. One evening the air was cool and the sky clear, full of stars. She was feeding the chickens when she heard soft footsteps behind her. She turned and saw him approaching, holding a small lantern. He offered her a calm smile, one that seemed warmer than she had seen before. "Mind some company?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, feeling a little nervous, but nodded. Together they walked to the barn. The animals were quiet now, settled for the night. He showed her how he checked the water troughs, how he secured the gates, and how he made sure the animals were safe. His movements were precise, careful, and surprisingly gentle. She began to see a side of him that was different from the distant figure she had first met. He cared deeply, not just for the land and animals, but perhaps, she hoped, for her as well. After the chores, they sat on the porch, listening to the sounds of the night. Crickets chirped, the wind whispered through the trees, and the ranch was alive with quiet energy. For the first time, they spoke about more than work. He shared stories of his childhood, of learning to ride horses, and of small challenges he had faced growing up. She listened intently, realizing that beneath the quiet strength, there was a man shaped by hardships, responsibilities, and experiences he had not yet shared with anyone. She felt a shift inside herself. The barn incident, once a source of confusion and fear, now seemed like a small window into his world. She began to understand that trust and patience were necessary. There were no shortcuts to understanding someone like him, someone who had lived through trials and carried burdens silently. She resolved to learn, to observe, and to support him in any way she could. But even as she felt closer, a sense of tension lingered. The town still whispered, and the mystery of the barn slept in her mind like a shadow. She knew that sooner or later she would need to confront the full truth. She would need to understand why he chose solitude in the barn, what fears or habits shaped his actions, and how much of himself he was willing to share. For now, though, life continued with its quiet rhythm. She worked, learned, and observed. She saw glimpses of his kindness, hints of vulnerability, and small moments of connection. And as she drifted off to sleep each night, she thought about the days to come, wondering when the next shock, the next revelation, would appear. The barn had already shown her that life on the ranch was far from ordinary, and she had a feeling that the most surprising moments were still ahead. The days after the barn incident were different. She noticed small changes in the rancher's behavior. He no longer seemed as distant or distracted. Sometimes he offered quiet smiles when she completed a task correctly, and occasionally he even asked for her opinion on small matters around the ranch. Though subtle, these changes meant a lot to her. She began to feel that slowly the wall between them was starting to crumble. One morning she decided to wake early and help with the chores before he even appeared. The sun was just rising, casting soft orange light across the fields. She carried buckets of water to the animals, fed the chickens, and swept the barn. As she worked, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. The rancher appeared from the shadows, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might like this," he said quietly, handing her one. She accepted it, feeling warmth not just from the coffee, but from the gesture. It was small, simple, but it made her heart feel lighter. "Thank you," she said softly. For a moment, they stood together, drinking their coffee in silence, listening to the gentle sounds of the ranch waking up. As the days passed, they began spending more time together. She learned to ride the horses confidently, sometimes racing alongside him across the fields. He taught her how to mend fences, check on the animals, and even repair some of the equipment. Though he was patient, he also demanded effort, showing her that he respected hard work and dedication. She admired his strength and knowledge, and slowly, admiration turned into understanding. One afternoon, a problem arose on the ranch. A cow had gone missing, wandering toward the edge of the property. The rancher noticed immediately, his expression tense. "We have to find her before she gets into the woods," he said. She nodded and followed him as they searched along the fence line. It was challenging, but together they found the cow stuck near a tree, frightened and refusing to move. With careful words and gentle touch, she helped calm the animal, while the rancher worked to untangle it. The teamwork required focus, trust, and patience, and had left her feeling closer to him than ever before. He looked at her with a faint smile, a mixture of pride and gratitude. "You did well," he said. She felt her cheeks warm. "We did well," she corrected softly, realizing that working together had created a small but meaningful bond. Evenings were quieter now, and sometimes they shared them sitting on the porch. She could ask questions about his past, and though he was hesitant at first, he gradually began to share more about his life. He spoke about growing up on a ranch, the challenges of learning to care for the animals, and the responsibilities he had inherited from his family. She listened, fascinated, and felt a sense of connection she had never expected. Despite their growing closeness, there were still moments of tension. Gossip in the town had started to spread. People whispered about the young bride, questioning why she had come and whether she was truly capable of handling life on the ranch. At the general store, a few neighbors watched her closely, offering half smiles and quiet comments. At first, she felt uncomfortable and out of place. She worried that her efforts on the ranch might never be enough to earn respect, but the rancher seemed to understand. He often spoke calmly, encouraging her to focus on her work rather than the opinions of others. "People will talk," he said once, as they walked through the pasture. "Doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what you do here and how you live your life." His words were simple, but they carried weight. She felt stronger hearing them and began to ignore the whispers, concentrating on learning and growing. One day, she noticed him looking troubled. He didn't explain at first, simply walking through the barn and checking on the animals with a serious expression. She waited until the chores were done, then asked gently, "Is something wrong?" "It's nothing you need to worry about," he said. But she could see the tension in his shoulders and the shadow in his eyes. She knew him well enough now to understand that when he said it was nothing, it usually meant something important was bothering him. "I want to help," she said softly. "I may not know everything, but I can be here for you." He looked at her, his eyes searching hers. After a moment, he nodded slightly. "It's just this ranch. The responsibilities, the work, it can be overwhelming sometimes. And I've had to handle a lot on my own. I didn't expect anyone to be here for me like this." His voice was low, almost hesitant. She reached out and placed a hand lightly on his arm. "You don't have to do everything alone," she said. "I want to help." "I want to be a part of this life with you." For the first time, he allowed himself to relax in her presence. There was no pretense, no guardedness, just the quiet connection of two people slowly beginning to understand each other. It was a turning point. From that moment, their relationship shifted. He began to include her in decisions, share responsibilities, and even confide in her about past mistakes and challenges. Meanwhile, life on the ranch continued with its daily rhythms. She grew stronger physically and more confident in her abilities. She could feed the animals, repair fences, and handle the horses with skill and care. Her husband noticed her growth and expressed quiet approval, sometimes with a small smile, sometimes with a nod. She began to feel that she belonged not just in the ranch, but in his life as well. Her challenges were never far away. The town continued to gossip, and one afternoon, a neighbor approached her directly. "I hear you're adjusting well," he said with a slight smirk. "But some folks are saying it's not easy to live out here. Are you sure you can handle it?" She stood tall, meeting his gaze calmly. "I'm learning," she said. It's hard, yes, but I can handle it. I want to be here, and I'm not giving up. The neighbor seemed taken aback by her determination and left quietly. She felt a quiet sense of pride. She realized that living on the ranch was not just about work. It was about patience, courage, and proving herself through action, not words. One evening, a storm approached. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, and the wind began to whip through the trees. Lightning flashed, and the sound of thunder shook the ground. The rancher immediately began securing the animals, moving them to safer areas, and checking the fences. She followed him, helping wherever she could. The storm was fierce, but together they managed to protect the animals and minimize damage. After the storm passed, they both sat on the porch, wet and tired but relieved. For the first time, she saw a deep vulnerability in him. He spoke softly, almost to himself. It's never easy, but somehow we manage. She nodded, understanding. We manage together, she said. The rancher looked at her with something more than respect in his eyes, something warmer, something more personal. You've changed a lot since you came here, he said quietly. Ah, you're strong, capable, and you care. Paul. His words made her heart beat faster. She realized that their bond had grown far beyond the initial awkwardness of strangers. They were becoming partners, not just in work, but in life. In the following weeks, small moments continued to strengthen their connection. He would leave her small notes reminding her of tasks, or quietly praise her for a job well done. She would prepare meals, care for the animals, and anticipate his needs without being asked. They began to understand each other's habits, preferences, and moods. Trust was forming, slowly but surely, and the mysterious barn incident no longer felt like a source of fear. It was a step toward understanding the complexity of the man she had married. Despite their growing closeness, she never stopped observing him. There were still moments of distance, times when he would walk alone through the fields, lost in thought. She respected his need for solitude, understanding that it was part of who he was. But she also felt a quiet determination to be present, supportive, and patient, knowing that eventually he would let her into all parts of his life. One afternoon, she found him working in the barn, organizing tools and checking the equipment. He looked up as she entered, a faint smile on his face.
"Want to help?" he asked. She nodded eagerly, rolling up her sleeves.
Together they worked in silence, the rhythm of their movements syncing naturally. It was comfortable, easy, and yet full of unspoken understanding. By the time they finished, the barn was neat, the animals settled, and both of them felt a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, she reflected on how far they had come. The barn incident, once a source of shock and confusion, had become a memory that marked the beginning of understanding. She realized that patience, courage, and empathy were the keys to building a life together. The town's whispers no longer mattered. What mattered was the connection she had forged with the rancher, the respect they had for each other, and the trust that was growing stronger each day. For the first time since arriving, she felt a sense of belonging, not just to the ranch, but to the man she had married. Life was not perfect, and challenges would continue to arise, but together they were learning to face them. And as the stars began to appear in the sky, she knew that the most meaningful discoveries were still ahead. The rancher, the town, and even the quiet barn held secrets, lessons, and moments that would continue to shape their lives. And she was ready to face them all, with courage, patience, and an open heart. Life on the ranch continued, but now it was different. The bride had grown confident, skilled, and independent, and the rancher had begun to trust her completely. Their bond had strengthened with shared work, quiet conversations, and moments of vulnerability. Yet the town continued to watch them closely, and whispers still lingered. People were curious, judging a young bride from far away, married to a wealthy rancher, trying to adjust to a life full of hard work and responsibility. One morning, the bride was out feeding the animals when she noticed a small group of townspeople at the edge of the property. They were whispering, glancing toward the ranch, and pointing occasionally. She straightened her shoulders and continued her work, deciding not to let them disturb her. But as she worked, she realized that the rancher had noticed them too. He appeared silently behind her, his expression calm but firm. "Ignore them," he said. They don't know what we do here or the effort it takes to keep this place running. Let's focus on what matters." She nodded. His words reminded her of all they had accomplished together, the trust, the teamwork, and the small victories that had built their relationship. For the first time, the opinions of the town felt less important. She understood that respect came not from gossip or appearances, but from actions and integrity. That evening, the couple faced a challenge that would test their partnership further. A fence had broken along the edge of the property, leaving the cattle at risk of wandering onto the neighboring land. The storm from a few weeks before had weakened the wood, and heavy rains had loosened the posts. The rancher immediately grabbed his tools, and she followed him, ready to help. Together they worked to fix the fence, their hands busy, their minds focused. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the field, but they didn't stop until the work was done. When the final post was secure, the rancher wiped sweat from his brow and smiled at her. "You've done so much in these past weeks," he said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." She felt a warmth spread through her chest. "We did it together," she replied softly. It was more than just a task completed. It was proof that they could rely on each other, face challenges together, and overcome obstacles as a team. As days passed, their growing connection became visible to the town. Neighbors began to see the bride's dedication, her strength, and the way she cared for the ranch and its animals. Slowly, the whispers changed. Instead of doubting her, people began to respect her. Some even offered help or advice, seeing her as someone who belonged, someone capable of thriving in this new life. She noticed the change, but she didn't let it affect her. Her focus remained on the ranch, her work, and the bond she was building with the rancher. One afternoon, a visitor came to the ranch, a distant relative of the rancher who hadn't seen him in years. He looked around at the neatly kept land, the healthy animals, and the hard-working bride. He was impressed. "You've done an amazing job," he said, addressing her. "It's clear you've earned your place here." She smiled, grateful for the acknowledgement. The rancher stood beside her, his eyes reflecting pride. "She's been incredible," he said simply. "I couldn't ask for better support." The town's respect for her continued to grow, and soon the gossip that had once threatened her reputation had turned into admiration. People were surprised at how a young woman from far away could adapt to ranch life, gain the trust of her husband, and show courage in the face of challenges. The barn incident, which had once been the subject of speculation, was now seen as a moment that had started a deeper understanding between the couple, a private event that had revealed vulnerability, trust, and growth. As their relationship deepened, the rancher began to open his heart more fully. He shared stories of his childhood, the responsibilities he had inherited, and the mistakes he had made along the way. He spoke about fears he had never voiced to anyone, about nights spent worrying, and about the solitude that had once felt necessary for survival. She listened, understanding that these stories were more than just words. They were openings into his soul, invitations to share in his life completely. One quiet evening, after the animals were fed and the barn secured, They sat together on the porch. The sky was painted with pink and purple hues as the sun set. He reached out and took her hand gently. "I want you to know," he said softly, "that I trust you completely. You've shown me courage, patience, and understanding. You're not just my wife. You're my partner in every way." Her eyes glistened with tears as she squeezed his hand. "And I trust you," she said. "I've seen who you are, and I respect and care for you. I want to face everything with you, no matter what comes." It was a turning point. From that moment, their partnership felt complete. They laughed together, worked together, and shared quiet moments that spoke more than words ever could. Life on the ranch, once overwhelming and uncertain, had become a space of connection, trust, and love. They were no longer two strangers navigating an unfamiliar life. They were a team, learning and growing together. A few weeks later, the town held a small festival, and the couple attended. People who had once whispered about them now greeted them warmly. Neighbors approached to compliment the bride on her dedication, her hard work, and the way she had adapted to ranch life. The rancher walked beside her, proud but humble. Together they accepted the town's respect, not as something they had demanded, but as something they had earned through action and integrity. During the festival, a young child ran up to her, asking questions about the animals and the ranch. She laughed, kneeling to answer, and the rancher watched, a smile playing on his lips. He realized that life was no longer just about work or solitude. It was about connection, community, and the people who mattered. The bride had not only earned his trust, but had also earned a place in the hearts of the town. Even the barn, once a symbol of mystery and confusion, now felt like a place of growth and understanding. It had been the setting of the first moment she truly glimpsed the rancher's vulnerability. It had been the quiet space where trust began to form. And now it stood as a reminder of how far they had come. From strangers bound by letters and arrangements to a couple united by respect, trust, and love. One morning, as they worked together feeding the animals, the rancher paused and looked at her. "Do you remember the first time you saw me in the barn?" he asked. She nodded, a small smile on her face. "I was shocked and confused," she admitted. "I didn't understand why you were there." He chuckled softly. "I was trying to find a little peace," he said. "But looking back, I realized that it was the beginning of something important, our understanding of each other." She laughed quietly, realizing how true his words were. Their life continued, full of work, learning, and shared experiences. They faced challenges, storms, sick animals, and occasional misunderstandings, but they faced them together. Each challenge strengthened their bond, each shared victory built trust, and each quiet moment created memories that would last a lifetime. Eventually, the town fully accepted the bride as one of their own. People no longer whispered but spoke openly about her courage, her hard work, and the way she had transformed not only the ranch, but the life of the man she married. The rancher, once distant and reserved, had found a partner he could rely on completely, someone who had earned his trust and shared his burdens. In the evenings, they often sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the fields. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they sat in silence, simply enjoying the peace of the moment. It was a simple life, but it was full of meaning. They had built something together: trust, respect, understanding, and love. And it was stronger than any gossip, any obstacle, or any doubt that had come before. Looking back, the bride realized that her journey had been more than just adapting to ranch life. It had been about learning patience, courage, and empathy. It had been about understanding a man shaped by life's challenges, learning to trust him, and allowing herself to be trusted in return. And most importantly, it had been about discovering that love can grow in unexpected places through hard work, understanding, and shared experiences. The barn, the animals, the fields, and the house all held memories of growth, trust, and connection. And as they walked together through the ranch, hand in hand, they knew that their life, built on patience, courage, and respect, would continue to grow stronger each day. The town, once shocked and doubtful, now watched with admiration. The young bride had proven herself, the rancher had opened his heart, and together they had created a story of resilience, trust, and love that would be remembered in the town for years to come. Even as the stars filled the night sky, they sat together on the porch, their hands entwined, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. Life had tested them, challenged them, and taught them lessons, but it had also brought them to this moment, a moment of peace, understanding, and love. And for the first time since her arrival, the bride felt completely at home, not only in the ranch, but in the heart of the man she had married, and in the town that had once doubted her.